What's up, friends, and welcome into the Week 13 recap. We've got injuries, we got breakdowns of all the games as we are starting up here. We've actually got just a couple games that are right at the tippy toe at the end, and then we are going to be stepping in to the Snow Bowl. The 49ers getting probably whooped by the Bills in what is supposed to be probably some very disappointing snow thing, but all you guys listening, you know exactly how it ended. I'm joined by Scott Bogman. We got Deepak Chona in the house. Boggs, your smile is a little contagious, obviously, because of Steelers and Longhorns, so all is right in the Bogman world.
Yes, Hook'em and Escalator of Sadness in Cincinnati all in the same weekend. I mean, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm loving it over here.
Well, it's a good thing the Niners haven't played yet, so my mood is up and down. But Deepak's always got a big smile on his face. Texans bringing it down like, I know you're always hoping for. And we do have a few injuries, nothing crazy. Deepak, how we doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. It's riding high and getting ready for fantasy playoffs, so let's do it.
Man, it is critical time. I know all you guys out there have been saying it, whether it's, you're coming to the end of some of those DFS, big DFS contests. FFPC playoffs started today if you were playing in the FantasyPros online championship, or, your playoffs are made here as you've only got this week and most likely next week to get everything right. So hopefully we can do all the breakdowns, give you guys some insight, and hopefully you started Bucky Irving, like I talked about on the live stream this morning, because it was Bucky, all me today, and it was all Bucky on the field. Gentlemen, let's get into this. We do have some injuries. I'm going to bring up the big board here as soon as I can get to it here. Our big board of injuries, one of the first ones we just threw out there was J.K. Dobbins was officially placed on the IR, if everybody saw that. We have Gus Edwards, a little Vidal. It's a bit messy there. The big injury, though, for this week was an absolutely brutal hit that Trevor Lawrence took. Knocked him out, looked very Tua-esque. He was taken out of the game, did not return. They're calling it a concussion, which is like, we use air quotes of the best case scenario. Yeah, obvious, but also like best case scenario that it wasn't something else. But we know how serious these concussions can be. So the big question, Mr. Deepak Chona, is how serious do you think this Trevor Lawrence concussion is going to be? Do you expect it to be the, usually we see a game miss variety, or do you think anything more severe?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I would expect him to be out at least one game. It looked severe, and you can't necessarily judge these things on video that well, but he did have the fencing response like Tua did, as you said. The other part of this is that he was already dealing with a pretty severe shoulder injury, and he was pushing through and playing on this injury. It kind of, in my eyes, maybe doesn't make sense for him to put his body at risk given the status of their season. So it's a little bit of a judgment call. You may see this one slow played a little bit.
And Boggs, one of the things from a fantasy perspective that anyone who was starting Brian Thomas when Lawrence got hurt, you were just like, oh man, Brian Thomas was able to still, do it at a big play, had the touchdown, like he was able to do well under Mac Jones. I've called him Matt Jones. I was about to call him. I'm like, that's not right. Mac Jones. Any fantasy repercussions, maybe specifically on Brian Thomas or any other targets, knowing that we're going to lose Trevor Lawrence for a little bit. And really we weren't starting Trevor Lawrence, more as that like we were wanting him for the other pieces.
Right. Yeah, I do think it's a downgrade to the receivers. And, like Deepak said, we'll see when he comes back. Yeah, it stinks. Hopefully it's just, the concussion is not as bad as it looked, but I mean, I've seen, Joe Flacco took a shot like Milano like that. Similar, Trent going all the way back to Trent Green versus Pecco. I remember a hit like that. Like these are brutal hits.
What do you think the Brian Thomas hit would be here? Like he goes from back, he was in a wide receiver 2. I mean, Mac looked okay with him. Do you think he could stay a wide receiver 2, or he's going to sit outside?
Yeah, I think just, in terms of ranking outside of Mageddon next week, I think for the time that Trevor Lawrence misses, he probably dips down to a wide receiver 3, probably a mid-range as well. So Mac Jones just has not looked good. He looked fine today, but, I just don't have confidence in Mac Jones. He has not looked good when he's been in there.
On the board, if you're listening on the podcast, we've got the visual board here. You should be checking us out on the YouTube. If you ever have a chance, you can be checking out live, or you can check the recap. We got the graphic up here. We had a bevy of injury wide receiver notes. Devontae Smith was a real brutal one for a lot of people, just because there was a lot of optimism that was kind of leading up to today. And then all of a sudden it was like, and he's gone. That's not going to happen. We Noah Brown left with an early rib injury. He's someone in deeper leagues people have been playing. And Ladd McConkey's a really interesting one because Ladd had a bonkers first half. It was like 8 catches, 100 and something yards or whatever it was. It was just an insane. His receiving yard prop, by the way, was hilarious at 64 and 5.5 catches. He crushed that in the second quarter. But then he suffered some type of a knee injury, and we didn't see a lot of him in the second half. So Deepak, I'm throwing all these wide receivers at you. If there's any long-term outside of week 13 for Devontae Smith or Noah Brown stuff, but more specifically, I'm really curious about your thoughts on Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, so I mean, let's start there with Ladd McConkey. We didn't have a lot of detail on this injury, but he did leave, and he came out and said afterwards that he's going to find out tomorrow. That suggests to me they're probably thinking MRI and look at the knee. Could very well be totally fine. We really don't have a lot of info to work on Ladd. Regarding Noah Brown, these rib and chest area injuries, assuming there's no rib fracture, a lot of these can be played through even a week or sometimes 2 weeks out. The key, though, is that there's typically about a 4-week performance hit. And with Noah Brown, he's kind of a borderline guy anyway, so you may want to factor that in going forward. And then Devontae Smith, it sounds very much like he's headed towards a return next week. But these even mild hamstrings do sometimes pop up and re-injure. So something to keep in mind. That's probably the real reason they sat him more so to protect him going forward.
Deepak, nothing. I just want to ask Deepak a question real quick. I saw Ladd McConkey after the game on the field doing an interview. Is that positive towards the knee injury here? If he is not going straight to the locker room and keeping off of it and all that?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, if you saw a very clear concern for a major ligament injury, you'd probably put him on crutches in the acute setting. So I would think so, yes, but not a lot of info, unfortunately, yet on that one.
And then Boggs, we're not going to do anything with, I mean, this was exact, dude, I had been talking, remember my thing I've said on every show this week? I'm like, if you gave Ladd Puka-like targets, he's going to put up Puka-like numbers. And he put up like Puka-type numbers in the first half, but, it's got banged up. I would say all of this leads to an optimism. And are you optimistic that he's going to be able to get past this injury and carry over and be probably a top 15 wide receiver next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. For sure. Like I said, I think him doing that interview afterwards, he was talking about coming back to Atlanta because he played for Georgia last year, right? Like that was they were not talking about his knee. So I think he's going to be fine, but we'll see. You never know. Sometimes that stuff blows up.
The other man watching this live, this Bucks and Panthers game as we're doing this.
Sweat.
Bucks just hit this field goal to go into overtime, and I had McLaughlin in a FPC, so let's go. Deepak, the other injury that we don't have a graphic for, it happened a little bit later at the end of the Saints game, was Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill took a brutal blow. He was getting involved. If you bettors are out there and you followed me at all, I had his 3.5 receptions on my card. That hit. That was beautiful. I also had the anytime touchdown, and he may have been getting into that spot, but he got knocked out of the game, and it didn't look good. Any thoughts on Taysom Hill? Because, he's been ranking as like tight end 4 or 5. Is this something that's going to carry out outside of this week?
Yeah, unfortunately, the video is very concerning here. The knee hyperextended. It sort of looked like it buckled. High concern for a ligament tear, such as the ACL or PCL. So at this late of a juncture, probably season ending, but we'll hope that the video sometimes overestimates the severity, but we'll kind of see what they come out with. I'm expecting the worst here.
And Boggs, the one thing I'll throw out lastly here is just the tight ends have kind of stabilized. Mark Andrews was good. I mean, Laporta did stuff. The tight ends are stabilizing themselves when we're getting into the playoffs. So losing
nature is healing.
Yeah, and losing Taysom Hill doesn't have as brutal of a blow because you were playing him on the upside. It was okay, but there are a lot of options out there, and you probably be comfortable with the Zach Ertz or the Pat Freiermuth of the world if you ended up losing. If you ended up losing Taysom Hill, you might hit that at the waiver wire this week.
Even Juwan Johnson on his own team had 7 targets, and Taysom Hill had 7 targets. So we could just see an increase for him, especially with all those wide receivers down. And it's, Alvin Kamara and nobody in New Orleans right now.
That's right. And a lot of injuries. Playoffs are here. Find Deepak at SportMD Analysis. Website is the same, Deepak? SportMD Analysis?
Sportsmedanalytics.com. And I'll be here every week with y'all too.
That's right. Always here with us. Look out for the shorts. We've also got on social. Deepak's always rocking it there. Playoffs important. Follow him and follow us into the next segment. Don't go anywhere. Deepak is going to be peacing out for us, but we're going to be breaking down the rest of these games right after this.
The fantasy season is like running a marathon. Checking your lineup, tracking injury news, making trades, Monday night waivers. You've got to show up day in and day out for 17 weeks. So how do you dominate your league without it feeling like a second job? The answer is My Playbook. Syncing your league with My Playbook is totally free, and it makes winning your league easy. You'll get a personal dashboard that has everything you need to know all in one place. News and notes for your players, bye-week alerts, matchup info, it's all there. Our league analyzer gives you power rankings for your league and shows you how the experts rate your team. We even have an AI model that studies injuries and tells you which of your players are going to play this week. And for premium users, there's every possible advantage you can think of. Set the lineup the experts would start with just a single click. Get instant waiver suggestions and trade suggestions anytime. You can even put your lineup on autopilot and have us set it for you. So this season, take your time back and dominate your league like never before. Start for free today with the My Playbook app or at fantasypros.com/myplaybook.
That's right, Worm. Thank you so much. That is right. My Playbook, from the Are They Playing tool to lineup optimization. Make sure to go and check it out and avoid all of the chaos that's going on. Chaos this week, relative chaos, Bogman. Your game when we get to it was nuts. We got end of regulation in the NFC South. There's just a whole lot. And then we're going to be traveling to some snow here shortly as we're talking to everybody. First game we're going to kick off in the recap are the Houston Texans and Jaguars. We mentioned that Trevor Lawrence is out and expected to miss some time. 23-20, Houston was able to hold this off even after that late Brian Thomas touchdown. The fantasy studs, Joe Mixon, as always. Stroud was relatively doable. And we also had the Brian Thomas Ingram working out for us. So what say you, Boggs, on what you saw out of this game?
Yeah, I mean, what I saw was more of a, the running backs were closer to a split for Jacksonville. It was 37 snaps for ETN to 32 for Tank Bigsby with Dearness Johnson out. Neither one of them produced very well. It was 58 total yards for ETN and 35.
They're just not startable.
Tank. So yeah, they just, the Jaguars specifically, if we're gonna knock the pass catchers with Mac Jones, the running backs, I mean, you just stack the box and stop the run because Mac Jones hasn't been able to pass very well. So the defense has been playing better for Jacksonville. We kind of saw that early. It took Joe Mixon a little bit to get rolling, but when he did get rolling. Nico, again, just as always, giant weapon. Tank.
They took Dell out of the game, though. They took, I thought that was really interesting because we were talking about how bad the secondary was all week. Nico was like, I think, number one in the consensus ranks, but Dell was one that it's like, okay, well, if Nico's going to dominate, Dell has got an opportunity, and he was just completely taken out of the game. 1 catch on 4 targets for 23. So,
I mean, I tell you what, as bad as this Jacksonville offense is getting, the defense is getting better on the other side. The defensive line in particular has been playing much better, which makes everything back a little bit better. So
okay, so on
Nico's just never going to be stopped. On
the Texans side, Mixon and Nico, you said it, forget it. Do you trust Dell for week 14? What's the scenario? Is he a top 30, top 35? And then the same thing I'm throwing out to you for Stroud. Stroud, I was more encouraged. You're saying the defense is better. It's still a little bit of a struggling defense, but Stroud was 22 of 34. Pass for over 240. That's what you want to see out of him. So Stroud seems fringy, but Dell seems like a really big risk.
Yeah, I mean, they're on a bye next week, but yeah.
Oh, is that next? Okay, then you won't.
It is a bye Mageddon next week. It's 6 more teams on bye, which this is the week that I think that I was like, I'm just going to ignore week 14. Who cares? If I'm dead, I'm dead.
I've got the Derrick Henry hit. I forgot the Jags.
I got JT.
Bye.
I got Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of buys this week. So
all right,
it stinks. But yeah, I think once they get back to rolling, I think he's closer to a low end wide receiver 3, high end wide receiver 4. He is definitely boom or bust, Tank Dell.
On the Jaguar side, what is startable moving forward with Mac Jones at quarterback?
Parker Washington had a pretty nice game, but I just, they got the game against Tennessee this week. I don't really feel trustworthy of too much. I mean, I'm starting Brian Thomas. Even Evan Ingram hasn't been great recently. So I think those are the two guys. Anybody else, I like Washington having a huge game, but I mean, do you trust him or Vele more? You know what I mean? Like Vele, we've seen him do it a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
Vele.
So yeah, I would trust a guy like that way more. So Parker Washington is earning my trust. He's on the radar, but I don't think he's startable unless you're in a deep 16-man plus league. Something like that.
And right here on the sheet, by the way, Houston on a bye. I didn't even look at that. Jacksonville has got Tennessee for next week. Next game up, the Chargers and the Falcons. It's kind of a bore, 17-13. As mentioned, Ladd McConkey went berserk. He was 12 targets. He went 9 for 117 before suffering that injury. No other wide receiver did much. We were without J.K. Dobbins, which turned into, I guess, Gus Edwards, but like Haskins had a fumble. Vidal didn't do anything. They gave 6 carries to Gus Edwards. And then on the Falcons side, it was, a lot of Bijan, as it should be. Bijan was the big play, and Kirk Cousins probably played one of the worst games ever. A league that Bogman and I share, I put in the Chargers defense for us in this big pentathlon league, and that was a good play this week. We scored quite a few points here. So what takeaways do you want to throw out here there's a lot of obvious Bijan, Ladd, even Herbert, these are the obvious things. What's not obvious and what should we focus on here?
Kyle Pitts. I mean, we were talking about the tight end position stabilizing. It's not for him. He had fewer snaps than Charlie Warner this week. I mean, you ran way more routes. I mean, Charlie Warner was on the field for 47 snaps to Pitt's 33, and Pitts ran 26 routes to Charlie Warner's 8. So Pitts is still the receiving tight end, but they just are not putting him on the field. Charlie Warner saw a lot here. Now, a lot of that could be because the Chargers front is tough, and Kirk Cousins just had a garbage game with 4 interceptions. So they were running the ball a lot, so a lot of that was because of just the flow of the game and all that. But I mean, Kyle Pitts is an absolute drop at this point. You don't need to be would you rather start Kyle Pitts or Juwan Johnson at this point? You know what I mean? With Taysom Hill down, I think I want Juwan.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the scenario. The only problem we have is like he's one of those guys that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, what if? What if and butts, those candies and nuts? But I don't.
And we're in our 40s and don't play for NFL teams. But like, what if we were tight ends, right? Like, because we had the same production as Kyle Pitts today. So
we're in retirement age. Unfortunately, Bogman, I finally had to hang it up in our brains that we're not going to make it in the NFL.
Well, doing my dynasty sheet every year, I'm looking at the birthdays, and when Tom Brady retired, that was the last guy that was older than me. Older than every.
When I start seeing the prospects that are older than my kid or the same age as my kid, I'm gonna pack it up. I'm gonna pack it up and be out of it. So,
but yeah, I mean, so that is what I saw from the Atlanta side. Obviously, just a bad game for Kirk Cousins, and everyone is affected by that. Drake London at 16 targets. I mean, Mooney had 6 targets, but only got 3 for 20.
Some really poorly thrown balls at Mooney. Mooney could have had not a big day, but a much better day. Just a couple of just uncatchable balls for him to do anything.
Chargers defense, man. It's dangerous. Derwin James was out there making plays. He made the play to seal the game, had a nice pick as well. Like he was just out there making it happen. On the Chargers side, Vidal over Haskins. And Haskins really, he had 1 carry, short yards. He fumbled and they didn't give it to him again. So
he's out.
Vidal is the backup to Gus Edwards. And that was kind of more evenly split. They didn't have a ton of Chargers offense had 46 snaps in this game. So Atlanta dominated time of possession here and just still really couldn't get anything done.
I wanted to ask the question, like, would you, if you were Hail Marying Gus Edwards or Vidal next week? Here's the problem. They got Kansas City. So that's just not a good space for either of them. Gus got whatever the volume was, but there was just nothing else. The running backs are not the play. Quentin Johnston, they had like an end around. They had 4 targets. It's not Palmer.
Another drop.
Not Johnston. Yeah, another drop. It's McConkey and Herbert, and Herbert's going to have a rough go with Kansas City. And then on the Atlanta side, Atlanta's going to be going up against Minnesota, which is also a relatively tough defense. But I think, you can still I'm still throwing out Mooney. I'm still throwing out London next week. Bijan, of course. Yeah. Cousins, I'm trying not to start. There's probably better streamable options.
And Pitts. Like, I've had it with Pitts. I'm tired of, I'll eat a real donut. I don't want one on my fantasy team. No thanks.
It sounds really good right now. Let's go over to the third game. Tennessee, they got taken to the woodshed by the Washington Commanders, 42-19. Though the Commanders, they got up to it like a 28-point lead. Then they just started like giving it away, and then ultimately ended up scoring a bunch. Daniels 206, 3 touchdowns, had another one on the ground. Brian Robinson, that was a big one on our start sit stream this morning. I'm very happy that one worked out because every answer of mine was Brian Robinson, 16 for 103 and a score. He was great. McLaurin, he got volume. That was like a big key. I've been looking for more volume from McLaurin. 8 targets, caught all 8 for 73 and 2 scores. Plus Zach Ertz saved a couple of my days. And then on the Tennessee side, Pollard, not much of anything. Nick Westbrook-Akina is the craziest thing.
He's a touchdown machine.
He single-handedly is going to let me win in the industry flex leagues where I was down and I had to put him in today in the starting lineup.
Where are NWI for life shirts? For life. NWI. Let's go.
New world order for life, or new Westbrook order for. Yes, I agree. He's crazy. And he's one of those guys where it's like, what do you do? Like, he's touchdown dependent, except kind of today because he had 61 yards. But he just catches them every week. He is the modern day Chris Carter. All he does is catch touchdowns. So he is week in and week out going to be a deep league flex option. Ridley was piss poor, but he just had really no viable targets. So anything else you want to hit with these guys?
It was less of a split than I anticipated because it has been for Spears and Pollard when Spears plays. This might be just because of game flow. Obviously, they were getting crushed. So, Pollard comes in more at the end, but I don't know. Maybe they're going more towards Pollard. We'll have to see against Jacksonville next week. And then Rodriguez and McNichols, they split kind of Eckler's touches here. It was kind of seemed like it was going to go more to McNichols, especially after the last 2 weeks. But Rodriguez was in there, 13 carries, 94 yards and a score. I mean, a lot of that was in mop-up time, right? Like you're just giving the ball to your big back that runs forward. So a lot of that was game script and game flow. But it is not just straight McNichols for Eckler. So they're splitting those touches behind Brian Robinson.
So do you think Rodriguez is going to be worth anything on waivers this week at all?
Not much, because I do think that McNichols will get more if they're in a more, a more competitive game. They're also on a bye this week. One of the million teams on a bye, Washington is. So I would, but if I have $1 and an empty roster spot or someone going on IR or something, I would throw a buck at Chris Rodriguez. He's a goal line guy. He's a big back. So he can
$1 in a dream.
$1 in a dream, baby. That's all that matters. Let's do it.
That's right. Tennessee versus Jacksonville next week. Washington is on a bye, so I know what the buys are. A lot of waiver questions. Waivers are weird this type of year. Sometimes you're just looking for live bodies. And as Bogman said before, week 14, Bipocalypse. It's back, and that's why you need the waiver assistant. Get ahead of your league mates with expert add and drop advice with waiver assistant, my friends. You guys can get locked in. FantasyPros.com/myplaybook for the top plays. You can sync your leagues. It can help you out with players that you should be picking up, where the waiver wire advice is at, who you should drop in that case, because every move is as critical as possible at this stage going into week 14. So go and sync your league. It doesn't matter if it's week 14. It's never too late. And you can get customized advice on your league right now. And a lot of the stuff is free. And then if you want to join up on the premium, or you can get a little, little trial run as you're working through some of the free features and you can set up for next year. Go and check it out today with the waiver assistant. All right, let's get to our next game up here. The Arizona Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings held off the Cardinals 23-22. Sam Darnold, 235 with 2 scores. Aaron Jones saved his day with a touchdown near the end. Justin Jefferson, solid. Addison, okay. Hawkinson, little disappointing from what our expectations had been. And then over on the Cardinals side, Kyler, 260 with a score, a couple picks. James Conner just got the contract extension, didn't do a ton. Marvin Harrison did get 12 targets, really is a just solid option. And one of the best catches you've seen all year, that Michael Wilson tipped pass, one-handed catch. And Trey McBride, firmly a freaking monster. So those are some of the surface level stat stuff. What do you want to throw out on the Vikings and Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I tank Harrison in the rankings, he gets the touchdown and 12 targets. Of course, it's just the way it works. But more snaps for DeMarcado than Benson, likely to pick up blitzes in this game. I know that people are afraid of Benson now because Connor got that contract extension, everything. And I tell you what, it doesn't help me in a lot of dynasty spots for sure. But Kind of surprised by that, but I think this was more game flow, and no one blitzes more than Minnesota in the league. So I think that's kind of what that was about. Aaron Jones fumbled twice and was benched for a little bit of a stretch in this game, which
Cam
is kind
Akers
of weird
had a little bit of a run.
Yeah. So he had more because we had gone like it was closer to a split 2 weeks ago. And then last week it was way more Aaron Jones and now back to Cam Akers being involved. So that was the reasoning behind that. And then if you're just looking down the board at like Michael Wilson, he is clearly the 2 to Marvin Harrison. Obviously, McBride is like the number 1 target guy on this team. And then Marvin Harrison is right with him, and then Michael Wilson. But Dortch and Zay Jones, they're splitting and rotating between each other. So not much there at all. Those guys can be cast aside if it's not Michael Wilson. So
yeah,
I think Benson is a hold, but I think, those guys are obviously tosses.
I think it's pretty standard across the board. Are you going to, with the Aaron Jones stuff, are you going to have reservations in ranking / starting him? He's going up against Atlanta in week 14.
No, I think he scored the game-winning touchdown. So like I'm okay with Aaron Jones moving forward. It was just kind of a, hey, look, if you're going to put the ball on the ground twice, we got to take you out. We have to keep the football. It's a close game. So I think it was one of those with a vet like that. Maybe if it was a younger player, I would be worried, but with a vet, I'm just not too worried.
Addison's going up against Atlanta. Do you think Addison is still firmly a top 35 wide receiver, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, he had just as many snaps as he had 50 to Jefferson's 51, and they ran that same exact amount of routes. So he is definitely the guy there. And Hawkinson, not a great day for him, but I know Johnny Munt vultured the touchdown. I understand people's frustration with Hawkinson, but Hawk is an auto start for me if I have him.
Yeah, I must have tuned in at a certain time where I felt like is Naylor going to get every target? But he only had 2, and I think it was just like a drive because I had Addison going, so I'm like, well, can we get Addison going in here? Kyler or Sam Darnold next week? Sam Darnold versus Atlanta, Kyler versus Seattle.
Give me Sam Darnold. Kyler's been kind of tough, and Seattle's defense is not bad. We saw Leonard Williams have that big pick 6 today.
Beautiful. It was beautiful. So Arizona's at Seattle. Minnesota is facing off against Atlanta. The Colts and the Patriots, another 1-point game here. Colts beat the Patriots 25-24. Anthony Richardson, 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. Jonathan Taylor had a really solid day, 96 on the ground. I believe he had a receiving touchdown. Pittman did not fill in necessarily the Josh Downs shoes. He did get 7 targets, but 5 for 42. Alec Pierce got the touchdown as he did, except it wasn't 50-yarder like we expect from him. Drake May, 59 on the ground, 238 in a passing touchdown. Stevenson had a pretty serviceable day, and we saw a lot more for the first time. The Booty Man, he had 6 targets, 3 for 41. Hunter Henry was also great. So do you think the Booty Man should be at the top of waivers for this week? Bipocalypse, well, unfortunately, yeah, New England is on the bye. So Indy and New England are both on the bye, so he doesn't help you during Bipocalypse. Is he someone you want to have stashed going into the playoffs for week 15 with this target uptick?
Yeah, I do. And it's not just targets. 71 snaps of 72 for him. The next highest wide receiver on the Patriots was Bourne with 46. And also 39 routes run. Bourne was second with, or Douglas, excuse me, was second with 28. So 11 more routes as the next guy in New England as well. So Boutte has become their guy right now. So yeah, I do. I want to invest in him for sure. I tell you what, man, A-Rich, he had the one good game when he came back, and he has looked like garbage once again. So 12 of 24, 109 yards and 2 scores. He had the rusher. So like the fantasy day was not bad.
Yeah, fantasy day was great.
3 touchdowns, but he is not helping anyone else here. It is tough. Pittman is going to remain a low end or a mid end wide receiver 3 to me with Richardson. And yeah, it's just.
How about a better question
right now?
How about a better question with Pittman? Do you think you are comfortable dropping Pittman right now because he's got a bye in week 14? You're in everything is kind of do or die right now, whether it's seeding or maybe you're trying to get in. It literally is do or die. Do you think Pittman is the type of guy at this stage with Anthony Richardson you could cut bait if need be because you are destroyed by Bipocalypse?
Yeah, if I'm destroyed by Bipocalypse and I need this playoff spot, everyone on my roster is cuttable. So he's definitely.
Well, I mean, Jonathan Taylor is not cuttable, but like I'm just saying,
Sure.
like a guy like Pittman is probably maybe like
Anyone but the
more likely.
ridiculously obvious guys are not cuttable. Yes, if you're in that situation, but I do think that it's possible. And I think that I would have a harder time to do it because I back Pittman so much. I'd feel bad cutting him, but I mean, who cares? Who cares about how you feel? Let's get the win. So if Pittman's not doing anything, Richardson has been, taking this whole offense back. Yeah, I think Pittman is definitely a guy that is a borderline roster guy at this point.
Richardson was ranked, I believe, 11 in the consensus ranks this week by all the rankers. Who would you rather go into? And it's probably matchups are going to be determined here as well, like
Sure.
Who they're playing. Who would you rather go into the playoffs with in week 15, Richardson or May?
Probably May.
Do you think it's super like matchup dependent?
It's very close. Because May will take off and run just like Richardson does, and he can score with his legs just like Richardson does. But he also passes the ball better. So the targets are obviously way better in Indy, and the surrounding cast is way better in Indy. But I think I would rather have May for in a vacuum without looking at all the matchups.
So here's the matchups in week 15. Colts are going up against the Broncos, and the Patriots are traveling to Arizona against the Cardinals. That's week 15.
Man, Cardinals defense has been pretty good, but I still want Drake May.
And then the following week, and I'm not going to do all of them, 16 Patriots have the Bills, and the Colts have the Titans.
Yeah, probably go Richardson in that one. So it is matchup dependent here, like we thought it was, because Rich had a terrible game today and still was okay in fantasy because of the scores. So if he's going to keep getting those scores and running, he's good. He just lowers everybody else around him that's not JT.
Patriots have the Chargers in the fantasy playoffs, and the Colts are facing off against the Giants.
That's
so
in
if you
the
look
championship.
at championship week.
And the Giants just lost Dexter Lawrence, their best defensive player for the year. Woof.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a brutal run there. So as mentioned, both teams are on the bye. The Jets held out against the Seahawks, winning 26-21. Geno did not have a great day. Ken Walker did not have a great day. Metcalf did not have a great day. JS, no one had a great day with Seattle. It was all pretty bad.
You sound like that. This is okay. This is okay. Everything's okay, except it's all bad.
Except it's all bad. On the Jets side, Aaron Rodgers looked kind of spry, still makes horrific. I mean, that pass of Garrett Wilson getting the separation in the end zone and not making that is just absolutely brutal. Breece Hall did not look healthy. Forced fumble, 12 on 60. He ended up fumbling the ball. Devontae Adams had 12 targets, only 5 were catchable, 66 in a score. Garrett Wilson, 10 targets, only 5 for 41. Let's start with the Seahawks real quick. JSN, Metcalf, Walker, Geno. The latter is more streamable. The other three are full-on plays. Is there any concern whatsoever across the board going into week 14, making sure there's not a bye? I don't see the buys actually here, so I don't know if either one of them are on a bye.
No, I'm not concerned with either one of these, with any of these Seahawks players. This is a bad game for Geno, and the Jets' run defense is still really good. So I'm just not going to be overly concerned with the Seahawks pieces here. I think JSN is going to be fine. He's been good before that. DK is still a monster. It's just, the Jets defense did bow up and play a decent game here.
Yeah.
And I if I'm concerned about anything, it would be more of a split between Charbonnet and Ken Walker, but we've seen this happen before. It's, he's ballooned up to like 45% while Walker's 55%. And then the next week he goes back to 65-35 or closer to 70-30. So
the bigger question, I think it was the very first question in the stream before we had even started. Someone said, what is your level of worry with Breece? Breece had come up earlier in the week with some potential like injury concerns that were floating out there. I want to say, I think his snaps were down a little bit. He still had a pretty good snap count, but then they brought like Davis in. What is your level of concern with Breece Hall after that performance?
I mean, my performance or my concern is not really about Breece. It's more about the Jets offense as a whole being miserable, but they do have good matchups coming up. It's the Jets next week, then the Jaguars, and then the Rams.
Wait, you
So-
said the Jets next week. That is the Jets.
I'm sorry, that is the Jets. The Dolphins next.
Oh,
week.
I was saying, are they on a bye? Are they facing
No.
themselves?
No, the Jets play the Dolphins next week. That's my bad. I'm looking
Okay.
at the schedule right here. But yeah, they play the Dolphins. I think that's a decent matchup for them. Then the Jags and then the Rams. So I'm not too concerned with Brees. I mean, are you going to bench him? Who are we benching him for?
I don't. Well,
right?
I mean,
Like that's the
sure.
question.
Next week is not the great week to have those type of decisive issues because like you're going to lose Derrick Henry. I mean, who do we're losing Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson. I don't have all the bye teams. It looks like I don't even see the rest of them. So
yeah, it's the Baltimore, Denver, Houston, Indy, New England, and Washington.
Okay, yeah. So Brian Thomas is going to be on a bye. That's not great. I mean, there's some
Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking running backs. If you were saying like, who are you sitting there? There's a significant players that are on bye, but from the running back standpoint, there's already 4 off the board. Yeah, you're probably right. Like, who are you going to end up sneaking in there?
Maybe who would you rather start? Would you rather start Brees against the Dolphins or Rico against Cincy?
It might be Rico. They got Rico heavily involved, and look at the. I mean,
they did
with the running
and
game.
the Bengals defense is awful. I think that is the closest one you're gonna get. Other than that,
might be it right there.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not starting Chuba over him against Philly. You know, the rest of these matchups, I'm not starting Pollard against Jacksonville or anyone for Jacksonville against Tennessee. So, yeah, it's limited scenarios where you're benching Brees anyway. That is why my concern level remains fairly low.
Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong about that. The limited scenario, though, is having options. If you don't have but like Rico's an interesting one because I would think most people would instantly be like, well, no, you're still starting Brees.
I'm glad that you paused because the Bengals defense has been terrible, right?
Yeah, well,
and Rico's getting way more involved.
Yeah, so. I think I will rank him over him, but probably not everybody is going to have the benefit. Also, like you lost J.K. Dobbins, and like that's one of those guys that people may have gotten late that really played well. So it's an odd one. We'll probably be talking about this and more over on the Discord. Come and check us out on Fantasy Pros. Roma Dunze wants you to do so. FantasyPros.com/chat. Go and join up today. It'll take you, when you do that link, it'll take you to our Discord. It's free. You can sign up. We got an amazing community, tons of rooms of people talking about different sides of fantasy. And also like the best part, 2 things I was going to say, one of which is Bogman and myself and Joe Pisapia. We do a live podcast on Discord every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern called Out of Bounds. If you guys have listened to it, where we are hearing all your bemoaning, we're talking about the latest news. We're having a little bit more fun, very more of a talk radio type of vibe that we do. And you can be in the live audience and interact. Me and Erickson do a show on Thursdays, except we didn't this Thanksgiving. The Extra Point, where we're just answering your questions. We got other offerings. Bogman and Fitz are doing one once a month. I think Fitz and Worm have one once a month. We got a great schedule. You can join those, be a part of it for free. Plus, we've also got a premium side where you can have access to the AMAs, which are just coming into our rooms, asking us direct questions for the whole Fantasy Pros community. So go and check it out today on Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. All right, let's get back to the games here. And I believe this is Bogman's happy time. Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Bengals 44-38. I think they said it was the highest scoring maybe matchup of all time, the highest scoring first half of all time. Russ over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jaylen Warren cashing my props. Thank you for 3 receptions. Najee was good. Hello. Pickens, of course, you caught a touchdown. You got a penalty. That's what you do. And Joe Burrow wasn't great. Chase Brown was. Jamar Chase and Higgins both kind of, did what you expected. Boggs, you saw this whole game. I know there's plenty of things to be happy about in real fantasy football perspective. Is there anything that stands out from a fantasy perspective? Because the one that jumps out to me is, Najee got back right, because I was sure living in a bad space with Najee, and this looked good.
Yeah, he looked really good. He looked much, much better. I think the 10 days between, he got gassed. They were using him so much early. He got gassed on a play and had to leave for a little bit. And Cordell Patterson came right in and replaced him for a little while. But
pulling Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, but I mean, he almost fainted. It looked like on the sideline. So it was real. They took a couple plays to walk him back around. So they're just using him too much. It was crazy.
I think there was something about like he did like a Thanksgiving thing with Pratt Fryermuth. He said his wife had made some really good food, but I think he was alluding to maybe he had to hit the bathroom or something like that. If you know what I'm saying.
Could have been it. He just looked like he was about to pass out. He gave up like in the middle of the play. It was very strange. But I mean, the refs were super involved in this game. So you know, we look and Joe Burrow didn't do great, but I mean, there were so many pass interference calls. He would have had more, you know, if those would have been catches, he would have had way more yards than Russ. But the refs were over officious in this game. 20 penalties in this one was nuts. So, but Najee back was good. And then I thought maybe, you know, I mean, the Bengals traded for Khalil Herbert. Maybe we're going to see a little bit more of him with Zach Moss being down and they want to, you know, do this. Nope. It's the Chase Brown show. 50 snaps for him of 62, only 6 for Khalil Herbert. So it is Chase Brown's job moving forward, and he is an RB1 moving forward in this offense. They are still clicking, even in a loss. I mean, their defense just isn't doing anything. So I'd expect every Bengals game to be high scoring moving forward.
He was ranked 10. I mean, their defense this week. So
their defense can't stop anything right now. So it's wheels up on Higgins and Chase Brown and Gesicki. I think someone was asking in the chat about Gesicki. He's a decent tight end if you had Taysom Hill go down or something. So
would you rather Gesicki or Kyle Pitts next week?
Gesicki.
Yeah, okay, that answers that. I think that's kind of the big thing. Yeah, I don't know if there's a big takeaway. It was an incredible performance. I think you're
not going to see Russ Cook for 400 again this year. I highly doubt it. So
well, they got Cleveland next week, so we can see what that is. Pittsburgh's got Cleveland. Cincinnati has Dallas for Monday Night Football. I think all the regular players are out there. I think Fryermuth is a better streaming tight end option than Gesicki. Najee is kind of back in a version of the circle of trust. Pickens is massively frustrating, but you know, don't complain.
He's just still good. Yeah.
Take your touchdown, take your couple catches, then take your penalty. It's more of a real life thing that's frustrating. The next up, we had the Rams and the Saints 21-14 in favor of the Rams. This one was just that, you know, the weird one with Taysom Hill going down. It seemed like every single time I looked, Alvin Kamara had the ball because he did. He had 27 touches. He went over 100 on the ground. MVS caught a touchdown, but it wasn't 50 plus yards. Taysom Hill, couple catches, couple rushes before getting hurt. And the most disappointing thing for me, to be honest with you, well, there's a fantasy angle here, but my God, I had a little 50-yard parlay going, and I just needed Cup to be involved in there. And D-Bros, Cup was absolutely not involved in this game. 3 catches for 17 yards. Puka did have a touchdown. The biggest surprise, though, was Blake Corum. Blake Corum, 8 for 42, looked good in his opportunities. He was getting early runs. Kyron ended up having the massive Kyron day, but Blake Corum's usage kind of perks up a tiny bit. Do you think there's anything there through the end of the season with Blake Corum, or is it just an annoyance that takes away from Kyron?
I think right now it's an annoyance, but if you're rostering Kyron and you don't have Corum and he's on the wire, you need to go get him, because if he goes down, Corum's value shoots through the roof. And if you're someone that has RB issues, then go get Corum, because if anything happens to Kyron, then his value shoots through the roof. If you have that extra roster spot that you're not doing anything with, MVS is sitting there and, you know, you can cut him and get yourself a running back. I would like to stash.
You want to cut MVS? They got the Giants next week. I don't know if I want to cut MVS.
I don't think I'm going to start MVS most of the time. So if it's just, I guess my point is not MVS specifically, but if you have a guy on your bench that is not going in your starting lineup because you just can't find a way to wedge him in there, I would rather have Corum and wait and see.
Was there anything else out of this game that stood out to you? Stafford wasn't at his best, 14-24. He had 2 touchdowns. Derek Carr had a bunch of volume, but not big production, just because his team is kind of a mess. And you had mentioned Juwan Johnson maybe being somebody that, you know, can be a pickup if you lost Taysom Hill and it's a really like just empty wire. Anything else in this game fantasy-wise?
No, not really. I mean, like you said, Johnson, 5 for 36, not a great day, but still way better than Kyle Pitts, and 7 targets on the table now that Taysom Hill is gone, a big chunk.
The Rams have Buffalo next week, no bueno, but as I mentioned, the Saints, they've got the Giants. So if you've got Taysom Hill out, I mean, it is going to be the Alvin Kamara show. MVS will get a couple of those targets, and he might be even more playable against that Giants team. And I actually do like Juwan Johnson. The more that we're kind of talking about it and going up against the Giants next week, he might be a super sneaky option because Taysom Hill was their secret weapon. But legit, it should be 30 touches for Kamara next week.
The Giants lost Dexter Lawrence and Theo Johnson. They cut Daniel Jones. It is a mess. They are packing it in for the winner, I think.
Two more games. Wild game at the start of this live stream that if you were watching on the video, I was looking down at, where the Bucks and Panthers went into overtime, missed field goal, then a turnover, and then McLaughlin hit the field goal to win the game. Bucks win 26-23. Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, 26-23 in overtime. Bucky Irving had an absolutely monster career game. 152 on the ground with a score and 25 carries. Also caught 3 for 33. You're welcome. Love some Bucky. Mike Evans had a big day, 8 for 118 in a score. Baker Mayfield did not have a great day. He got hit and knocked out of this game for a tiny bit. Trask had to come in, throw a pass, but he came back. He threw 2 interceptions with a touchdown. And on the Panthers side, Bryce Young, 26 of 46, 298 and a touchdown. Chuba had a really slow game. Bryce also had a rushing touchdown. Thielen, 8 for 99 in a score. Tommy Trimble had 5 for 77. Thielen is the number one there, and he is a massive target for Bryce Young, and he might still be out on the wire. I think he's the type of guy that you just make sure, had you not, just to pick him up and don't let him float around, because the Panthers, they are just slinging the ball at the end of games.
I completely agree with that. And Leggett had one hit him right between the numbers and just flat out dropped it.
I think 8 targets, right?
Yeah. A lot of targets for him too. I mean, look, Bryce Young looked good. Now, again, Irving got the Panthers defense and Bryce Young got the Bucks defense. So, this is a little bit of a slap fight, but Thielen, I completely agree with you. If he's going to be getting a lot of targets and we expect the Panthers to pass the ball a lot because they're going to be losing a lot, then wheels up. Let's go get him if he's on the wire. Absolutely. I'm not too concerned. I know it was 12 touches to 9 touches for Hubbard and Brooks. I don't see the snap count yet, but I'm just not too concerned about Hubbard moving forward. The one thing that Bucks have on defense is a good front. So
just point out, Chuba didn't get involved in the passing game, and I believe he's the one with the critical fumble. Not saying that's going to amount to anything. They gave him a contract extension, but just very interesting seeing the usage adjustment here. Jonathan Brooks, 9 touches technically to Chuba's 12, and in the receiving game, and then that critical fumble. I don't know, man. Like maybe Jonathan, do you think Jonathan Brooks has enough juice to be the type of guy that you would flex if you're desperate? I loosely use. Yeah, you have to have pretty big stones, I think, to do that. But I want to look at the snap count. I want to see what the snap count was between these guys before I make a big time decision. But right now, I don't think I would. I still think this is a backup running back for the Panthers. I think Chuba is still their guy. What about Bucky though? Where are you at on I see? I didn't get. I don't want to say I got pushback. Yeah, no, I know I didn't get. I don't want to call it pushback. I do feel like I'm kind of the Bucky guy in our crew, because it was every question today. I'm like Bucky. But do you think this is? You defended him so much on our show that you threw me under the bus for my ranking of him, and I was still higher than ECR on him. Yeah, you're like, well, whatever, Bogman. Hypothetical fumble for him. I'm like, I have him at 13, bro. I'm not but my point was, because you had said if he fumbles, no, Bucky's he's not coming out of the game.
My
and I think
point was he still have Rachaad White, but after this, Rachaad White is the backup.
So my main point is what do you think? What's the line of where Bucky starts over said person? We're going to have a million Bucky questions this week because he's the type of guy that someone might have with, Breece Hall and another good back. I'm starting Bucky over Breece Hall, and it's not even a question. But I know it will be a question. I'm just curious. What do you just pseudo? You're not doing the research right now. What do you think the line is? He's top 15. He's a top 12. You did say RB1.
Yeah, I think he's an RB1 moving forward with some of these guys falling a little bit and Bucky getting 25 touches. Again, it's the Panthers, but they get the Raiders next week. And then they play the Chargers. Not a good matchup. But then they get the Cowboys and the Panthers.
It's just it's an incredible.
The rest of this schedule is unbelievable for Bucky. So Bucky is going to be an RB1 moving forward, if not a top 10 RB.
Only other thing, Sterling Shepard ended up having 7 targets in this game. Again, in the world of desperation, do you think there's something maybe worth looking out there? I mean, there's a lot of those type of guys. Leggett might be one of those. Sterling Shepard, we've talked
I would
about
rather
a
have
bunch of them.
Leggett. I'd rather have so many guys than Sterling Shepard. I just think he's super old, and I think he is extremely touchdown dependent. Now they put him in around the goal line a lot. You see him in those formations. You see him getting the occasional target and the occasional touchdown, but I just don't want anything to do with Sterling Shepard, to be honest.
Final game that we're breaking down, Eagles and the Ravens. Eagles beat them 24-19 in Baltimore.
You hate to see it.
You love to see it. Jalen Hurts, it was pretty brutal to watch, to be honest. If you watch this game, this was not a great game. Jalen Hurts, 11 for 119, 11 for 19, 118 passing yards with a touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. Barkley did go over 100. AJ Brown, we all thought, no one person is culpable here. We all thought AJ Brown was going to go ballistic. He was just 5 for 66. Dallas Goedert had a
Hurts
touchdown.
couldn't get him the ball.
Yeah, well, they couldn't. There wasn't a lot of great throwing in general. Lamar Jackson was pretty good, 23 of 36 for 237, 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 79. Derrick Henry was fine, 82 yards. We have unfair expectations for him. Mark Andrews, 6 for 67 and a touchdown, just absolutely saved me. Likely also had a score. Zay Flowers, 74 yards. What do you do here? What is the breakdown? It was a brutal week for Hurts, and hat tip to anyone that did put questions into this matchup and maybe didn't start Jalen Hurts for some other options. But is there anything that's breakdownable here? I feel a little bit better about Mark Andrews.
I mean, it sucks. Jalen Hurts is not passing the ball well. They only let him throw it 19 times. They ran it, 33 times, and he got a little exposed in this game because the Ravens secondary has been garbage, and he could not do anything against them. That's why AJ Brown was so high in all the rankings. So I'm a little concerned for targets with the Eagles moving forward. I mean, Goddard got a touchdown. Devontae didn't play in this game. Maybe Devontae comes back and loosens everything up, and just the whole offense moves a little bit better. Let's hope for that. But Hurts was brutal to watch today because everyone's been passing on the Ravens. So I was a little surprised by that. You're right. With the Ravens, there's not much to break down outside of I got a text from our boy CK today. He's like, why did the Ravens trade for Deontay Johnson again? Like, what was the point? Because he's just never on the field. And I said, because it was free and he could replace Zay if something happened.
I feel like they did a favor for somebody. Someone called in a favor.
No, by trading that pick, they get the comp pick back for when Deontay signed somewhere else. So
what comp pick are you going to get? A 2042?
It's the same thing they traded. It's a 6. They traded a 6. They get a 6 back. So you literally have nothing to lose. And the Panthers get the idiot out of their locker room. And, they get Adam Thielen back and Leggett involved and just more younger players involved. And Deontay's a big old crybaby. So you hate to see it. You hate to see him go to a team and they lose a bunch of games. You hate to see that.
I know you do. Ravens are on a bye, and it's the biggest brutal blow for me and a lot of fantasy teams. Derrick Henry, I have in a lot of spots this year. I've got a share or two of Lamar. Mark Andrews early on was very unfortunate that I've had a lot. This is probably one of the biggest blows to the bipocalypse. They're out. On the inverse of what we were just talking about, just wanted to throw out the Eagles have the Panthers. So if there's a game to potentially get right, hopefully the Eagles can get right against the Panthers at home. Jalen Hurts, get going. It's a beautiful, perfect matchup. Boggs, those are the games. We got the snowball. I know people listening, you'll know the ramifications of it. I will say that, and Terrell and I talked about this, early indications. We literally said this. I said, hey, listen, with the knowledge that we have right now, is this game looks terrifying because of the weather, but we could overplay it and the weather could calm itself down where it is just a bad, weird, cold game and there could still be a ton of offense. At this stage, that might have been it. And hopefully we had enough options to turn to. You were never not starting McCaffrey, but Purdy's going to be very interesting in here. Shakir, Jennings, I think those are guys that are very susceptible. I'm saying all this, you guys know it, not trying to break it down, but just to say that this was the risk of having a game at night that has torrential, snowstorms. It was just a really unfortunate thing. It would have been great if we had it at any other time, but that will be a big part of what we're talking about this week. So the final thing is there anything else from this week from a fantasy perspective that we're going to be carrying into week 14, do you think, that we didn't cover?
Apocalypse, man. It's it's going to be a lot of scrambling to fill your roster and figure it out. So we will be with you the whole week doing shows to tell you how to fix the holes.
That's right. Phrasing. That's exactly right. Friends, that is it. That is all that we have for you on this week 13 breakdown. I cannot believe we're in this stage. I'm pumped up because next week it is big go time for every fantasy league. That's it. That's all that you got. So make sure you're tuned in. The schedule here, super important this week. The buy, sell, trade show, it's now a prediction show with Erickson and Worm and myself. Make sure to check that out. Bogman and I with Pisa Pia are back on the Discord. We've got the start and sit. We've got the waivers. We've got it all. Plus into the betting side, we got you covered as well. I want to remind you guys, if you haven't already taken advantage of it, you still got time. Download the Betting Pros app. Use code FP free. You guys can get 1 month of unlocked premium access. So you can do all the data research and see all of the stuff for yourself. And you can follow all the great people at Fantasy Pros. Myself, Bogman, Pisa Pia, Debro, Fitz, everybody that's on there. You can track our bets. You have community feeds. It's a really great resource. There's a lot that you can use for free, but this is an opportunity for you to have the entire kit and caboodle unlocked. See how you like it. FP free is the code to use. Bogman, this is it. That is it. Thank you guys. As always, make sure to follow us on the youtube.com/fantasypros and give some likes and all that on the podcast. For Mr. Scott Bogman, I'm Chris Welsh. We will talk to you again right here on Fantasy Pros. Goodbye, friends. So long. Farewell. Avidas and goodbye. I give to you another piece of pie. Goodbye. Goodbye.